Welcome back to CC with Moxie. I'm here again with my dear friend Lauren Clemmer. She loves curriculum, and many of you have asked for options for your younger readers. You've said, can I see some different options of curriculum, particularly for phonics, spelling, learning to read, the language arts? And Lauren has a great collection of curriculum and a lot of knowledge. So I have brought her on. This is not my area of expertise. Thank you for being with me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And E has
Yes.
been awesome and so encouraging. And we've known each other. I think we did another podcast, but as far as we've known each other for many years and our children have really grown up together. And so she's inspired me at the playground every time. I'm like, E, what do I do? She's just like, and she tells me, because if you put the Lord first and have your Bible time and devotion first, then you just have to trust Him with the rest of your day. And so that's how it's worked out. So I'm so glad. It's been such a blessing.
Good.
And we do CC together, and we've done, how many years have you done it?
Oh, total? 11 or 12? I get a little, maybe 11.
Well, she started at 4 years old.
And I should be able to do math by now, people. She's challenged too. So she's 16 now. So
that's
probably 12 years.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And we were finishing our ninth. I guess we finished our ninth year of doing CC. So we really both love the classical method, and so we're going to approach the language arts with a bird's eye view. And one of the books that he gave me years ago is called The Well-Trained Mind. And so a lot of these resources are found either in the Well-Trained Mind book or the CC bookstore, or just online, recommended by other classical educators.
Yes.
People.
Wonderful. I think we're going to start off with kind of pre-readers, very young, 4-ish, right?
So bird's eye view, what you want to think about is, as far as language in general, as children grow up, developmentally, they have this internal language where they're listening and they're hearing and they're getting used to it, and you can tell from an early age what they regurgitate and what they hear will be produced. So the same way, when they're early readers, they're going to listen a lot. So it's important for you to read a lot to your children. And we're going to start off with just what we have here is lullabies. Okay, so just think about early nursery rhymes, nursery songs, and then it doesn't have to be any formal book, any one book, but there's this book of nursery rhymes that has, birds of a feather flock together, and it's so important for them to be able to repeat it and learn how to separate their words and articulate and get used to just the cadence of speech. And just like it will turn into fluency when they're older. So you just read to your children. And then really it's awesome to get an anthology of literature, because when you think about Western literature and in general, you have common stories because you want to promote conversation. If you're going to promote common stories, then you're going to encourage to have a common knowledge. So like if everybody knows the same story, then they can talk about it, and that's what you want. Okay, can you hold that? And then so you can use things like World's Best Fairy Tales. Johnny, who's my 11-year-old, is actually just reading this. He said not to move the bookmark, so this is a good one.
I will not move the bookmark.
Okay. Okay, there's that. So there's also Phonics Through Poetry. You can just get a general children's poetry book. This is focused on certain sounds for phonemic awareness, which you don't have to have, but this is what I have. Okay. And also just to reinforce nursery rhyme, a little coloring. So while they're listening, they can keep their little hands busy with coloring. And there's, you can get anything. They can just do white paper, or they can do a coloring book.
Fine motor skills before they start handwriting.
And then this is Children's Book of Virtue. So really a lot of different stories just to get them in, like to be able, and then to retell the stories too, to articulate. Again, internal language, external language. You want them to be able to talk about it. So that's it. So that's sort of pre-reading. So think of it as preschool and kindergarten, and that's what we have so far. Couple things about the alphabet, since you're starting that in preschool and kindergarten, or whenever you start reading, which can be
I have
age 7.
Yes, start at 6 or 7, and the comparison devil we kind of talked about. Try not to let that enter into your home. Some kids, I think back in the day I was told if they can sit for about 20 minutes, they're ready to start little lessons. And if your 4 or 5-year-old is not ready, that is okay. Give them more playtime and try back in another 3 to 6 months. If they're still not ready, try when they're ready. Otherwise, they're going to be frustrated. And instead of getting a love of learning, they're just going to have frustration. So definitely wait till your kid is ready, even if you, mama, are super ready and they're not yet.
Yeah, a lot of parents will use reading alone as a measure for their children's success in school, and that's so limiting as far as if the child likes another subject in general. When I could tell when my children were ready to start language arts and writing when they started just spontaneous writing themselves. So they would sound out, just copy things that they were seeing, or just get a crayon out and start making letters on their own. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to follow their lead, and they're ready. So let's just spend a little bit of time every day. You don't want to spend too much when they're little to burn them out. But here are some resources we use as far as beginning readers. So if you're going to teach the alphabet, one wonderful way to do that is Handwriting Without Tears. And Handwriting Without Tears is a program. It's a handwriting program, but it was done by an occupational therapist and a physical therapist. And what's really cool is that you get these letters and there is texture to them. So what you want to do is multisensory learning. You want to wake up different parts of the brain. And if you do that, and there's also a puzzle that goes along with the whole alphabet. Some people call these sandpaper letters and numbers. And so this is just a set from Handwriting Without Tears you can do, which is a great set.
So multisensory meaning you say it, you hear it, and you're writing it. And when you bring all of those senses together, they're more likely to remember it kind of quicker, right? Is that the...
Yeah. It'll kind of be filed away faster because there are more points of connection.
Got it.
I guess. So then this is also really fun. Dr. Seuss's flashcards, and I used a little pocket chart for when my kids were little. So there's a capital A, lowercase a, and then they have funny Dr. Seuss characters on the back, like a zizzer, zazzer, zuzz.
Now we're going to kind of go into when your child is ready for a little bit more of a formal reading curriculum, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a fan favorite is the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading, and this is great. It's a comprehensive book starting with their first sounds, again, the sound and letter connection. And it's comprehensive as far as it should be. When you complete it, you should be able to read most books in your library that are general elementary and beyond. So that's really wonderful. What we do find is that some children have a hard time if they are dyslexic or have different language challenges. Then All About Reading is another wonderful.
Real quick. Let's make sure we give mamas practical pros and cons.
Yeah.
So the pro to this one, you just said, it's pretty comprehensive. It'll take you through about second grade reading level. I do know, I happen to love this, I've used it, but a lot of people don't love, it is all in black and white. If you are looking for the super colorful, with all the pictures, that's not this. The nice thing about not having all the pictures and colors is your students are not guessing what the word is. If they see a D-O and then they see a dog on the page, they're just gonna go dog, but it might have said dot. So some people love the black and white without all the photos, some don't. So just know that this program looks like this.
Yes, so it's one book. It's a go-to, and it's comprehensive. You don't need anything else. And there's games included and different materials. So there's that. Okay. And then we have All About Reading. So I was looking for something. My third-born child had some difficulty reading and learning letters, and it took a lot longer. So I thought, well, maybe we can use something else. It would be engaging, and it could also teach her how to follow directions and go through a process, and just sort of like a puzzle manipulatives game. So it does. It has, there are phonogram cards and word cards, and for Ordinary Parents' Guide to Teaching Reading, there's also a set that you can print out yourself on cardstock. Or you can
write them. I'm cheap.
Or you can write them. Which is great, too, for them to see you writing the letters. But anyway, so that's it. This is their level 1, level 2, level 3 is what I have.
I've never used it, but a lot of mamas talk about this in the homeschool world as being pretty solid. Are there a lot of gaps here with this reading program?
No. So this is Orton Gillingham based. The scope and sequence includes all of the sounds.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then this is an example of what it looks like as far as if you use it. It comes in a workbook like that, but people who reuse it just keep in a little folders, the activities, so you can reuse them for different children. And then, but then
this
also
goes with this.
Right.
Okay.
I did my second born. I used All About Reading level 1, level 2. But by the time we got to halfway level 2, he was already done with it. I just thought, we don't need to use this anymore. He can read independently. He doesn't need any more explicit teaching. So with that curriculum is also All About Spelling. I haven't used it, but heard it's really good because it goes with that. And then for my third born, she needed a little bit more support too, because even with the all about reading, it just wasn't enough. So what I decided to do, going back to the multisensory, was that I went to this training, the multisensory education, the institute. So I went to her training and I got to use these different books. But basically, it showed me how to do the 3-part drill, which I talked to Rebecca Gaston about, and a couple people have really liked it. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of, in extension of it, you say the sound, and it's here. So you're doing it here. So you see the sound. Here we go. You see the letter. You say the sound for each separate card list, and then you blend it together. And some of them are nonsense words, but nonsense words really help you test to see if do they really know the sound that is represented by those letters. And then you get a tray, and I'll show you. This is kind of like it, but you get a large, think about like a fast food tray, and you spread this sand on it. And this helps as far as beginning letters too, like when they're first working on their handwriting. To just trace it. But what they'll do is they'll do short words, like 3-letter words, and they'll spell it and then underline it and then say it. And so it's really helpful. So if you need to go a little slower, and if your child's taking a little bit more time, this is how you do it. And there are different ways to do it. So you don't have to get this whole set or to go through the training, but you can use the different books.
What made you want to go through the training? I think that's probably important.
Yeah, so let's see here. So I have some books on dyslexia. I think several people in our family, on my husband's side of my family and my side of my family, are dyslexic. And so 1 out of every 6 or more than that children are dyslexic. And that's just talking about the different language centers in your brain are not quite firing as the other children who read quickly do. And it may be that those brain juices are dedicated more to creativity and to writing stories and imagination rather than such black and white kind of connection. So with that, I was just really desperate because I had spent a lot of time and I was like, this is not working. And so
one of her children is dyslexic.
And so, but her handwriting is awesome. So that wasn't like one of the things that usually there are 6 or so indicators of dyslexia. And so she has express language dyslexia. So as far as like word recall and naming certain things. And so this has really helped her, and it's amazing. We hired a tutor. And so I guess a whole summer, and then a whole semester of the fall. And then we focused it, and we did it every day for 45 minutes, going through all the drills, being very careful and consistent. And then by now she's she's almost finished the 2nd grade. So she did kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade in about a year. So she's really, she's a smart girl, and a lot of dyslexics are very smart. It's just they need that extra support to get them to where I guess other children are with their reading skills. And so, and really, by the time, there's another website I followed, is Homeschooling for Dyslexia, and she says that by middle school, typically they're caught up. But you want them to be able to take advantage of that. Audiobooks are also a great resource because if you don't have time, even though they're older children, so they want to have more interesting stories rather than these fairy tales or these beginner reading content. So you can do audiobooks for them, and that's great because you not only read with your eyes but your ears too, and your hands.
I love that. So we just gave you a bunch of options on learning to read different programs. This last one is actually mentioned quite a few spots in the CC bookstore, and it kind of bridges all those concepts together. This is a learning to read program, but it is called, I don't know, can you get it out? It's called Spell to Write and Read. And it kind of brings together the concepts of spelling and handwriting and using those to help you learn to read. So Lauren's got...
so they have the phonograms, just like you would with a lot of other reading programs. There should be like some different, they have different ones, like there's 70 phonograms, and this one, other programs had up to 80. And then with this program also comes the spelling rules. So you'll get spelling cards and then the explanation behind there. And there's also a program called the Writing Road to Reading, and it's just sort of the inverse relationship between letters and sounds. So this comes with the CD, I think. So it'll give you don't have to look it up on YouTube or something.
So what is better than I do from your background as a teacher training, what is kind of the concept behind handwriting and spelling being important in learning how to read?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think when you start with fine motor skills, coloring, and then you can go from coloring, making X's to making squares to being much better at your handwriting. So that goes with it. And at some point with reading capabilities, then spelling capabilities come with that. So as far as like when you're doing the CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant, like cat and bat and let's see, mom, or dad. So then they'll be able to spell those words. And I have it here, but Explode the Code is a really wonderful bridge to the connection of, okay, now I know my sounds, I know how to write, let me start writing on purpose. And so this is not writing as far as you're not writing paragraphs, you're not writing sentences, this is just kind of like copy work. So it helps, and then you're practicing all of the skills, all the spelling rules and all the sound rules to go with it. Does that explain what you're
Yes, and then it goes back to, I guess, that multi-sensory approach where you're seeing it, saying it, hearing it, and writing it brings it all together. Yeah, so a lot of people do, I think you were saying the other day, a lot of people do handwriting, spelling, and reading all kind of together or back to back. So it's wise to do it together instead of doing handwriting and then going off and doing math and then coming back and doing spelling and then going off and doing history, to do all your language arts together in one fell swoop, right?
Right. Yeah, you can very much do that. So we've gone over kind of pre-reading, beginning reading to late readers, I guess you could call them, or just struggling readers. And then so now we're going to go back into sort of the beginning of handwriting and how you start that. But to finish off, like once your child is off to the races for reading, you just kind of say, the goal is for me teaching reading, once I've told you how to do it, now you can read any book in our libraries, because that's the classical way of it, then independently choosing living books and studying topics that go along with the curriculum. So cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3 is how I've arranged my library as far as like picture books and then novels. And so it's really cool to be able to relate it all to the memory work and the timeline. Then they can figure out, oh, these puzzle pieces are really coming together and I'm layering it and I'm learning more how to do it. So it's exciting. So when you're doing handwriting, you start with, if you're doing multisensory, what I did with Handwriting Without Tears, and they have a special little board that goes with it with a smiley face. But so what you can do is you would take the letter, we're going to just use a Z, right? So they've done multisensory here, and now they're going to produce it with their handwriting. So they start on the left, okay, and then follow the design of the board, and then you can use multi things, like so they use the chalk, and then you can use a little kind of wet eraser. And then once it's all wet, then you trace your finger along the wet path. So you're cementing and you're giving them many ways to connect in their brain of how to form the letters, and then so reproducing it. So then that's good. And then they can also use the sand. There is also, with My Father's World, there is an alphabet, and I love My Father's World for kindergarten.
Love it. I use it for kindergarten.
It's great because when we talk about this too, with your oldest, you're going to have many more materials because your younger ones, depending on how many children you have, are going to be listening. So that's why you want to keep them in the same kind of area. So even if they're doing another activity, they can be overhearing, because it's amazing to see how much they're like sponges. They just absorb all these things. So you're going to do a lot of work for your firstborn and your second, but then your younger ones are just kind of already know it. And you're thinking, oh, This is an easier job. So I would say, like My Father's World, I did it with Hobie, but I didn't do it with the other ones as much because they already been through it and remembered it. But I think it's great. I don't have it anymore because I gave it away.
I do.
Yes. Okay, because you have younger kids who still need to go through.
Yep.
So this is the alphabet, and it's awesome because it's a little puzzle, and then sometimes there's pictures behind it, but there's different textures of them. The children can hold it. They can use Play-Doh to make impressions of these. So this is really wonderful, because when they're little, they don't just need pencil and paper. They need lots of toys that can be also learning tools too. That's it. And then another thing with, what was it called? Handwriting Without Tears is, you can do, this is like another salt tray with the sand I showed you earlier, but then there's different shapes, like these big wooden blocks, so they can make and form letters, and they can do, these are uppercase ones.
Oh, those are cool.
Isn't that neat? And then Matman too, so it's like illustrating. So this is really helpful for the kids in loving it. Here's the chalk, the small chalk for the fine motor skills. So that's for handwriting.
Don't be afraid to get stuff that's fun. They're more likely to want to do it in sand or salt or rice, whatever you have at home. They're more likely to want to do it with chalk, even if it's outside on your driveway, sidewalk chalk. It does not have to be at the very early stages, sitting at a desk with a piece of paper and a long pencil. If you've ever noticed, a lot of kids that are little struggle with holding that long pencil. It weighs so much. So if you're really trying to get good handwriting skills, it's okay to use a short piece of chalk or maybe a shorter pencil that isn't so heavy, but don't feel like you have to recreate the classroom at home. The world is your oyster at this point, so you can use other methodologies like rice and
sand,
and
and even
sand.
Play-Doh to form the letters. So make it fun.
Yes,
Yes.
they're more apt to do it.
So a couple of things I wanted to say too, since we started with, it's important to read to your children, and the first lesson of our day is Bible. And so I think that definitely, reading from the Bible, going through a storybook, answers in Genesis, all kinds of devotions. But just know that when you're reading the Bible, first of all, it's valuable in the God's kingdom, but also it counts as far as literature. So just don't think, I haven't read to my child today. If you did Bible, first things first, okay? All right, so we're going to
Get
move
your
on.
heart right.
That's right. We're moving on to handwriting. So we're going to go to the bottom and the basic from there and show you some books. Here's the Handwriting Without Tears book. This is Kick Start to Kindergarten. And there's a 4-year-old book too that's green, and it's really wonderful. So it starts with, you're going to have large letters, and there's different things to color on each page. But it's really wonderful, and it connects to the chalkboard and the sticks, like I showed you just a second ago. And so my children have used this up to 2nd grade.
I haven't used this, but I heard, do correcting. I heard, is there either not a top line or a bottom line, or what makes this program different, Handwriting Without Tears?
Yeah, I think there's just fewer lines. There's not that dotted line in the middle.
Okay. There we go.
So that's
But a lot of mamas love this one. So Handwriting Without Tears.
And then, Zahner Bloser also offers a really wonderful one. I don't start this until 3rd grade, just because I think it does better developmentally for their size of the letters at this stage, and they have great cursive books. Okay. There's also a great cursive book for prescripts that CC does, and it's really beautiful, a coloring page to go along with it, and just very basic. So this would not be a comprehensive in a sense of like they can write a whole paragraph in cursive by the time they finish this book, but just introductory. So
Yes.
prescripts
And I
is
like
good.
prescripts because some of them, there's different ones on the website, but some of them relate to the timeline and some of them relate to your history sentences, different memory work. And so you're working on your memory work and you're working on your handwriting. And then there's always a picture in here so that they can do some coloring, fine motor skills again. So it, what's it called? It skins many.
Cross-curricular.
There we go. Cross curricular. There we go.
Yeah, it's multi-subject. There you go. Okay, this is another favorite. This is Explode the Code. When I was living in Charlotte, I had a little babysitter, Lydia, and she was in Challenge 1. And she so smart and fun and sweet. And so she helped me when I had 3 babies, 3 and under. It was crazy. So anyway, her mom had several children, and so they all homeschooled, obviously, with CC. And she gave me a couple of things. When we moved and I started homeschooling, she said, okay, here are a couple of things that you can use. Explode the Code was one of them, as far as how to teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons, which I used, and it works for some children, but not every child. So anyways, this is a really wonderphonics program. It's phonics-based. It'll start with the CVC letters, and it has, we call it self-checking. So a lot of times I have my children do this independently. So they start off with circling the right word, and then they write it, and from word bank, and then they have to read a sentence, choose which one it is, and then they write it themselves. So the whole little lesson, I tell my kids to do 3 pages a day. It's really important early on that you can even set like a 30-second or a minute timer to sit with your child to tell them that you're paying attention to how their handwriting is. Because if they know you're not watching them, then they're going to write it all over the paper. It's going to be sloppy. And they're not going to use their handwriting skills in their phonics book, which is important. Now, my children have used a lot of these, and I like to use them for morning time. So you can see, and it goes all the way up to level 7. And my oldest Hobie did this. And it really is helpful because it goes from the CVC words and then up to multi-syllabic words, and then let's see here, just really and some word parts, so like prefixes and suffixes. And then you can get into, like, once you finish this, you can go off to the races and do morphology, which is, Greek and Latin bases and prefixes. So, which leads into Latin for a challenge.
For challenge. There we go. And there also are some half books in here, right?
Yes.
For any gaps or.
Yeah. So for my third born who has dyslexia, we took a little bit more time in this. Just because she needed to really, I wanted her to master them. So that's one of the ones, like just the second, let's see, you do 2 books per year, so it's not grade level based. So I think 1 and 2 is kindergarten or first, and then so on. So by the time you finish 4th grade, you should finish sort of the comprehensive numbers.
Got it.
Yep. All right, that's it. Okay, so then another beautiful option is there's a lady named Brandy Farrell who does Half a 100 Acre Wood, and she has done classical conversations, and she puts out different guides and just wonderful lists of resources and video matchups, so we can't recommend her enough. She puts out for each cycle a handwriting book, and it's really beautiful. And so this is for ancient times, and so for each one there is a picture study, which has a work of art, and there's a poem, and so you really want your children to be more familiar with beautiful literature and lyrical words. And so they practice copy work with this handwriting from the poem. And this is going to be cursive. There's one for cycle 2, for medieval, it's hymns, and then Americana. And this year my boys are doing some history units. And so, there's one Christopher Columbus. And so as you're talking through, it also involves just a lot of noticing detail. And then hopefully still too, you're still watching your kids' handwriting and making sure they're getting even better at their handwriting. So that's it. Here we go.
Awesome.
And I think that's pretty good. And then finally that would lead to the essential solution. So like when they're finished, when they're a fluent reader and they're writing, their handwriting is ready and they're writing sentences, then they can get ready for this essentials. So the essentials program is, the essentials of the English language guide, right? Lee Borton's. And then you do math games. And then Elizabeth was my tutor this semester for my kids. She did awesome. And then you do IEW, which is the writing. So you're going from grammar to math games to writing, and it's really wonderful completion to the program. And so all of this, just know all the puzzle pieces are coming together. There's no one perfect program. We also recommend first language lessons. So just talk with your community, just like we talk at the play dates and on community day. What do you recommend? These are the problems I'm running into. How can I simplify? How can I get better at this? And then really share curriculum, because you can find a lot that's already used. We have the Homeschool Hangout in our area. That is a great resource, and they can tell you what to use, or just look where your homeschool local bookstore is, because you can find lots of used things. And then whatever they have there, it's probably wonderful. Please trust the people who've used it before. And also I want to recommend too, I think we talked about this, there is something called user error, okay? Where there is a wonderful curriculum, you just don't use it right, or read the directions. So
that's happened to us before, where we've gone, this isn't working because it doesn't have, and a friend will say, oh, but it does. If you go to the last page of each chapter, it has that. And we went,
read the directions, right? On how to do it, because it could have everything you want it to have, but you just have to look at it and study it. And that leads to just keeping things simple and having time for your children, because when you take time to read to them every day, that will help the rest of their language and their school development, and really equip them to learn on their own. And one cool thing too we did was this past semester we started a Essential Boys Book Club. And so once a month we choose a book, and the parents kind of agree on which ones they are, and they have to do with the cycle. So cycle 3, U.S. history. And it was really fun. It was really, we had a bunch of boys want to do it. And so I think that's just encouraging all the children to want to read, to share ideas, to read together, and because it leads to more conversations.
Yes, and that's really where you're going to see a lot of fruits, discussing and kind of hashing out what you just read in the book. What does God think about this? And what time period was it happening in? And all those good nuggets that you can bring out of the book. So both of us have a love of instilling a love of learning at an early age. And so if you can get your child to love reading, then they can really learn anything. And remember, classically speaking, we are not, or at least at CC, we are not teaching you what to know or what to learn. We're teaching you how to learn. And if you can read well, you can learn all sorts of things through books and have a wonderful learning experience doing so. It doesn't have to necessarily be curriculum. I will also say sometimes we get that comparison devil in us where I go, oh, Lauren's so much better at X, Y, Z than I am, and I wish I had. Listen, I have access to her wonderful ideas and knowledge. And so doing Tribe Life, you get that anyways. But also just remember, every kid is so different. And I was on a very tight budget and still am for a long time. I was able to use the same curriculum for most of my kids for learning to read, and I just tweaked it here and there. So if you're somebody that needs each lesson plan fully done out for you, and you're a beginner, go for a plan like that. But if you're comfortable enough going, you know what, the main nuggets of this will work for my child, I just might need to write some phonics cards or add a little activity here or there, feel free. You often say it's like a recipe. Feel free adding a little extra salt or, tweaking your recipe, so to speak, to make curriculum work for your kid. It doesn't have to be exactly the way it's presented in here.
Exactly, yeah. And I had one friend ask me, I don't know if I said this before, but how much does homeschooling cost? And I just laughed and I said, well, how much do you want it to cost? And so really it can be free. Like there's so many resources on with your public library for phonics in general, leveled readers. There you can go online for audiobooks. And so you do not have to spend a lot of money to help your kid be a successful reader. Think about people in history. They didn't have a whole lot. And you don't have to have 1,000 books. And really the more that I look at my library, I think, how many books have I actually read or my kids have actually read from this? And so having, good 10 picture books per cycle, that is plenty. So I brought a couple of, okay, first of all, one more thing about dyslexia. This is Dyslexia 101. And Marianne Sunderland, and she does she has her website, and the Dyslexic Advantage, because children with dyslexia, a lot of times they're found to be the CEOs of companies, and they're very, very successful. So you'll once you unlock the hidden potential of the dyslexic brain, you see them go, okay? But I wanted to tell you too about the cycle. So this is just an example. So you have, let's see here. Tiki Tiki Timbo, that's cycle 1, ancient China. And then you have cycle 2, the Viking invaders. And then 10 Mile Day. And that's what I'm going to read this week with my kids for the Transcontinental Railroad. So just choose a couple of these and have your kids pour over them and read them. And really, less is more. So just have a few and read to them and go to the library.
We've had so many library dates over the years where we go on a certain day and our kids would come and we'd enjoy picking different fun children's books for free from the library that corresponded with the science or the history or the timeline for that week, and then dig in at home and have fun reading wonderful books about that time in history. So yeah, it does not need to cost hundreds or thousands of dollars to homeschool. It can if you want to go there, and that's fine. But use your free resources. And also, libraries often have like a friend's library section where they'll sell used books for like $1. So we've gotten a ton of great books that way for very cheap. And then don't be afraid to go to your Goodwills and places like that too.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, we have several hybrids in our area. And so when I go there, I find tons and tons of actually, very useful books. So.
Yes. So as you're doing this at home and figuring out what you might use curriculum-wise, remember practicums are coming up all across the country wherever you are. Go. It's a great day of equipping for the mamas. You'll meet other mamas and be able to talk different things. This is the Foundations curriculum for the year. And as you're doing all this research at home and teaching your kids to love reading, don't forget to CC with
Moxie.
Moxie. Thanks, guys.